Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new, almost a Tesla, new NVIDIA daily update video. So today, let's go over NVIDIA stock. Let's go over what has happened to the stock, what we can expect moving forward, and all of that good stuff. And yeah, as per usual, if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you do enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, etc., well, I do share my thoughts with my members every single day. The market is open for just $3 a month. Link is down below in the description of the video. Well, I want to stay on this post specifically because I want to go. Actually, no, I have another thing open. Yeah, $3 a month where I mainly show posts on Tesla stock or share my thoughts on Tesla stock every day. The market is trading while it's trading. Sometimes other stocks are for $5. You get access to the first tier plus NVIDIA daily updates. But ladies and gentlemen, jumping into it, NVIDIA closing the day, unfortunately, down another almost 6% on the day, closing at, we'll say $110.50 per share, which obviously compared to the market is going to be, you can argue roughly in line with the market. QQQ definitely experiencing a pretty substantial drawdown today of 3%, right? The market is just in a very much of a kangaroo market, very aggressive sell-offs. The market is very unsure of what it wants to do, but you know, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. So for NVIDIA, what do we have, right? Well, you know, as I said, losing this level over here wasn't ideal, right? NVIDIA needs to reclaim this level, right? This is a level to be careful about. Now, granted, you know, it is kind of now following the market, right? But nonetheless, you know, NVIDIA, along with the market ultimately, but in this case, NVIDIA needs to reclaim 116 to as high as 119, ideally 119 in my opinion, but that's what it wants to reclaim, right? Until it reclaims that, NVIDIA does remain in concerning territory, I guess, potentially very concerning territory. And I'll explain that again more in the weekly once again, which, you know, I already talked about many times, but I'll quickly reiterate it. But there's a saving grace. There's a saving grace. And that's AVGO earnings, Broadcom. Broadcom actually did just report earnings, up a beautiful 8% on the day. And why is that good? Because this is, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is the first chip semiconductor that has reported earnings that has not sold off pretty aggressively. For instance, NVIDIA had earnings, sold off. We already know what happened to that. The next day, completely sold off. So let's see how it obviously performs tomorrow. AMD sold off. I can't remember what happened to Intel. Did Intel sell off? I don't remember. That was a while ago. But what did sell off, Marvell, just had earnings yesterday, down 20%. The market has not been kind to semiconductor earnings. So Broadcom coming in and having almost a 10% pop on earnings can be that relief for semiconductor stocks, NVIDIA, AMD, Marvell, etc., which could be good. So that's a good sign. That alone could be a good sign. But moving over to actually, you know, NVIDIA itself, what do we actually want to see on this stock, right? What do we need to see on the stock for things to turn around? Well, first and foremost, like I said, 116 to 119, that pretty much needs to get recaptured. If we don't, and essentially as long as we remain below it, and especially if we lose, and especially if we close below Wednesday's low, which is pretty much 110.5, we most likely will sell off probably pretty aggressively, and probably very quickly to about this bottom channel here, which will take us to, you know, about 106, we'll say, give or take a couple dollars or so, 105, 106, 107, 104, something like that, right? Somewhere around that range. You know, I don't know exactly. No one knows exactly the exact number, but around that, you know, 105, 106, give or take a dollar or two range. The good news is if that happens, I actually think it will snap back pretty aggressively, you know, because at that point, the stock would be way too oversold way too quickly, right? Again, it's kind of like, you know, going back to the mean reversion strategy, right? If we just look at mean reversion, what do we have? Well, you know, the mean reversion is currently sitting all the way up here on the daily at about, we'll say high 120s. We're at 110. If we come down to 106, guys, it will be way too oversold way too quickly. Stocks don't just go down. Stocks don't just go up. Obviously, there's exceptions when NVIDIA actually literally only just went up. You know, there are exceptions. You know, NVIDIA did have some pretty crazy run-ups, but for the most part, they don't just go up and go down like 90% of the time, right? They revert to the mean, which is why this kind of Bollinger Band and mean reversion strat overall is pretty effective for the most part, like 90% of scenarios. Even here, when we had a massive sell-off, yes, we ended up not only reverting, but went back to the opposite end of the spectrum. Same here. Massive sell-off, how far we were away from it, came right back to it. So pretty good stuff there. So let's see how this plays out. And the point is the fact that we're very far away from the mean. So you can only go so much lower. It's kind of like when you're in water and you're in a swimming pool and you know how you have like those kind of plastic balls and you just kind of try to push it underwater. You know, if you push it down a little bit, it'll pop up a little bit. But the more you push it down underwater, and the deeper and the further you go underwater and then let go, the higher it's going to fly up and, you know, back out of the water, right? Like a whale or something like that. You know what I mean? It'll jump out of the water more aggressively the deeper you push it down. Same idea to the upside and to the downside, right? The farther and the faster it falls away from the mean, the faster, when the reversion does happen and more aggressive, it'll be to the upside as well. And that's where shorts will really get burned. Like longs are getting burnt, but then those kind of moves violently to the upside to revert back to the mean, or the opposite is true as well. They're made to destroy the opposite end of the spectrum, essentially. In this case, it'll destroy the shorts. But again, we're not there just yet, right? So that's why I'm kind of just saying, if we do get that move to the downside, closer to 105, I don't think we'll go much lower short term. I don't think we'll, just completely bleed to like $90 like straight. I think we'll most likely revert back at the very least close to the mean, back up to like the low 120s, which could be a phenomenal trading opportunity. But yeah, so I'm kind of waiting to see on that. I still have my cash put on NVIDIA. I'm not too worried, right? Again, it's pretty much at my buy level. So if it happens to get filled at 106, which is where I have it for next week, I'm okay with buying there. That's where I'll begin a position there. And the key word is begin. But yeah, so that's kind of my overall perspective on NVIDIA, right? The weekly is the one where I'm definitely more concerned. I've talked about this many times. Now, it is also, like I said, very far away from the mean, but this is a slight exception, at least for now, short term, mainly because we are looking kind of bearish here, right? Remember how I mentioned once the stock really starts to hug the bottom end of the Bollinger Band after it got tight and it starts to expand, there's a good chance that we continue in that direction, most likely pretty aggressively. That's kind of what's happening with NVIDIA. And unfortunately, that's not done just yet, which is why I do think there could be more pain to the downside. Like worst case, $100 per share, but I probably think it will stop closer to 105 before I think, it will have a pretty aggressive snap back up. Like I said, probably closer to the low 120s. And that's where things will start getting interesting. So it could have a move that looks something like this. But then this is where it'll be very interesting to see if NVIDIA can recapture what at the moment seems like it'll be a breakdown to potentially trap and then make its way back up. Or does it reject here and then make its way potentially lower like this, which would be the more likely outcome. But obviously we'll get to it when it happens. So that's kind of my issue with NVIDIA. Okay, so how about this? What do the bulls need to do to save the stock? What do the bulls need to do to save it from potentially making its way down there and having this potential, pretty bearish correction essentially that'll start happening on the stock? Like, what do the bulls need to do? Ideally by tomorrow, maybe by next week, but ideally by tomorrow, they need to close somehow. I mean, it'll be it's asking for a lot. AVGO earnings might actually unironically help with this, but they need about a 5% day tomorrow. They need a 5% day tomorrow. We're already getting 1% of that after hours, which is good. So they need another about 4% tomorrow, which is not impossible. But the reason they want that is because they want to close this candle back within this large wedge, essentially, right? We're in this large ascending wedge. They want to close it back within, so we still have this potential run up and rally back up to 166. Now, if NVIDIA can close back above this wedge, I would view this as a false breakout or breakdown, I should say. And that could be, that could spike a pretty aggressive move to the opposite direction, right? Almost like a rubber band effect. But we're not there yet, right? We need to see how tomorrow closes. So hopefully the Broadcom earnings, is good enough. Hopefully that is what, NVIDIA needed to fix this chart that has issues for sure. But let's see how tomorrow plays out. Tomorrow should be pretty important for this stock and see how that goes, right? Again, if you also take out these bad boys here and bring out the EMAs, we're potentially risking a close below that 117, which is why we need to close back above about 117 tomorrow, guys. The bulls need to really step in tomorrow. Very, very important. So let's see how that plays out. But yeah, that's kind of the main thing I'm looking at right now on NVIDIA stock overall. So let's see how tomorrow plays out. But now I mentioned this in the Tesla video, and I'll mention it one more time here very quickly in case you haven't watched that one. I like the fact that NVIDIA is not really doing this, unfortunately, but I like the fact that the market, which obviously can help NVIDIA, is printing a lot of bullish divergences. For instance, you can see QQQ over here as it's obviously making these lower lows. My goodness, what the hell, man? As it's making these lower lows like this on QQQ, RSI is making higher lows. Very obvious higher lows, nice looking bullish divergence, while the I'm gonna go and delete this. Dude, why, am I stupid? All right, here we go. And then the VIX is doing the opposite. The VIX is doing the exact opposite as it's continuing to make its way up higher, hugging the 8 EMA, constantly going higher, closing higher too. This is the highest it's closed. What is RSI doing? Bearish divergence. As we're making higher highs on the VIX, making lower highs on the RSI. Divergences take time to play out. It's not going to happen overnight. However, not a bad sign. I like to see that. So let's see how this plays out starting potentially tomorrow, most likely into next week though. So I like to see those kind of factors. And the final thing I'll mention very quickly is the fact that QQQ, again, looking at seasonality, we are of course, usually around the period where these kind of corrections essentially happen, where the VIX spikes and the market follows around March. Sometimes it happens a bit earlier. Sometimes it happens a bit later. Last year, it happened around April. You can see here, we had this was the correction on April. Market had a parabolic round up, nice little correction, and then it continued. And then what did it do? I had a further correction as we approached September. Usually a bearish month happened 1 month earlier, and this time it happened in July, August. But nonetheless, massive sell-off. But the point is look where QQQ bounced every time, the 50 EMA. And that's exactly where we are right now. So, if the market has a place to find a bounce and to, finally put in a bottom, it's pretty much there, guys. This is the spot to do it. If we start closing below the 50 EMA, some concerns can start being taken place, in my opinion, but we're not there just yet. And so far, we're in a pretty prime spot to bounce. So let's see how the market responds tomorrow. Hopefully, AVGO earnings help that scenario. And the last thing I want to talk about that's also market related is QQQ and SPY, for instance, are potentially printing what looks to be a bullish megaphone pattern. A bullish megaphone pattern kind of looks like this, where you have a massive move up, you have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that kind of expands outwards, and then obviously you break out and move higher. And tell me this doesn't look pretty much the exact same. 1, 2, 3, 4, then we have 5 up here, right? Tell me this doesn't look almost the exact same as this. Right, pretty much the exact same looking pattern. So again, it's not perfect, right? We'll see. It's not guaranteed, obviously. But again, if the market has a place to bottom out, we're pretty close. We're pretty close, guys. We're pretty close, if not there. So again, I don't want to be like that typical. People always mention when your Furu stops calling the bottom, that's when it'll bottom. So I don't want to be part of that statistic, obviously. But if there's a place to do it, man, this is a pretty good place, guys. This is a pretty good place with all these things I'm seeing: bullish divergences, bearish divergence on the VIX, the megaphone pattern, blah blah blah. Tesla looking pretty good. Nvidia is still the one I'm concerned about, I'll be honest. But if Nvidia could get and close back above 117 tomorrow, hey, okay, we actually could be talking now. Okay, now we might be making something interesting happen here. So let's see, guys. Let's see. But all in all, that's all I got for you. Let me know what you think. Thank you all so much for watching. See you tomorrow. Peace.